Modern men are waking up to a quiet truth, one that society refuses to speak out loud. Being single isn't a failure, a weakness, or a sign that something is missing. In many cases, it's the first time a man finally becomes honest with himself. It's the moment he steps out of the noise, the pressure, the expectations, and the illusions that were never designed for his benefit in the first place. When a man lives alone, something profound happens. He stops running. He stops pretending. He stops performing. He begins to see life, relationships, and himself with a clarity he never had before. The world has spent decades convincing men that their worth is measured by who chooses them, who validates them, who approves of them. But solitude tears that lie apart. Being alone shows a man something he rarely gets to experience. Peace that does not depend on another person. This peace isn't loneliness. It's not isolation. It's clarity, a clarity men have been denied for generations. The noise of the modern world. The modern world is louder than ever. Social media turns relationships into performances. Dating apps gamify intimacy. Society pushes narratives that reward dependency but punish independence. And all around you, you're told that you're incomplete unless you're partnered, married, or constantly connected. But when you live alone, all that noise fades. You start observing instead of absorbing. You start thinking instead of reacting. You begin to ask yourself questions you never had space to consider. Who am I when no one is asking for anything? What do I actually want from life? What do I value, not what I'm told to value? What kind of peace have I been missing all this time? In solitude, you are no longer trying to impress someone, no longer negotiating your truth, no longer bending your boundaries, no longer performing emotional labour for someone who may not understand or appreciate it. Instead, you stand alone, and for the first time, you can hear yourself. That is power. The risk of modern relationships. Modern relationships carry risks that men are never warned about. Emotional risk, financial risk, legal risk, social risk. In the past, relationships offered balance, cooperation, mutual benefit, shared values, shared struggle. Today, too many relationships feel like walking blindfolded through emotional minefields. One wrong word, one accusation, one emotional outburst, one shift in someone else's mood, and everything you've spent years building, your job, your reputation, your assets, can be threatened overnight. Social media has made privacy almost impossible. Men are judged instantly, publicly, and permanently for situations that are often one-sided or exaggerated. Screenshots replace conversations. Group chats replace accountability. Emotional narratives replace truth. The more emotionally exposed a man becomes, the more doors he opens for manipulation, misinterpretation, and humiliation. So men step back, not because they hate love, not because they fear women, but because the consequences today are too high to ignore. This isn't paranoia, it's pattern recognition. The choice for peace over chaos. Many men today choose solitude not from resentment, but from wisdom. They've experienced enough imbalance, enough emotional unpredictability, enough double standards to understand that their peace is priceless. Being single gives a man something relationships rarely give him today. Stability, focus, control over his time, emotional clarity, financial discipline, mental silence, an environment without tests, games, or contradictions. There is no chronic emotional volatility, no guessing, no walking on eggshells, no decoding mixed signals, no paying the price for someone else's unresolved trauma. It's not avoidance, it's survival. A man's peace is fragile. When he gives it away carelessly, he loses himself. When he protects it, he grows. The myth of external happiness. Society still romanticizes dependency. It still sells the idea that a man's happiness must come through someone else's approval, that his identity should revolve around partnership, marriage, family, and sacrifice. But the independent man sees the truth. Happiness is not something someone gives you, it's something you build. Happiness is structure, happiness is discipline, happiness is purpose, happiness is control over your environment, Happiness is consistency, something many relationships do not provide. Freedom from constant compromise allows a man to grow without guilt. It gives him space to choose direction over distraction. It lets him align his actions with his values instead of someone else's emotions. That is liberation. Once a man feels the calm of solitude, truly feels it, he stops confusing attachment for meaning. He stops mistaking chaos for passion. He stops surrendering his life to someone else's instability. A man who becomes comfortable alone becomes unmanipulable. Modern relationships, a new kind of danger. Modern dating is not what it used to be. The emotional rules have changed. The power dynamics have shifted, and men are often expected to absorb the consequences without complaint. Many modern women carry emotional wounds they have not addressed, trauma they have not healed, expectations they have not questioned. Yet they want men to provide stability they do not provide themselves. They demand empathy without accountability, freedom without responsibility, validation without respect, loyalty without reciprocity. They want a man to support their emotions while often refusing to regulate their own. For a man seeking peace, this becomes emotional exhaustion. You're expected to be the protector and the punching bag, the provider and the therapist, the leader and the scapegoat. You get blamed for problems you never caused. You get judged for standards you never agreed to. You get tested endlessly to prove what you've already proven. You can do everything right, and it still won't be enough. Because the emotional economy is broken. The system isn't balanced. A man gives strength, effort, stability, and commitment, yet he is treated as disposable, replaceable, mocked for caring, criticized for withdrawing, judged for setting boundaries, shamed for expressing masculinity. Society tells him to be sensitive, but when he speaks his truth, he is called weak. When he stands his ground, he is labelled toxic. When he wants fairness, he is labelled insecure. The system does not protect men. Not legally, not socially, not in relationships, not in public opinion. Family courts almost always side against men. Custody battles leave him financially and emotionally crushed. One accusation can cost him everything, even if it's false. His pain is seen as comedy. His struggles are ignored. His vulnerabilities are mocked. Men have learned to walk away not from love, but from danger. Solitude becomes a shield in a world where one emotional mistake can destroy a man's life. The end of the old expectations. Society still tries to shame men into marriage, says he's incomplete without a wife, says he's immature if he chooses freedom, says he's selfish if he prioritizes himself. But that narrative was built for a world that no longer exists. Marriage used to be survival, now it's liability. Marriage used to be partnership, now it's performance. Marriage used to offer balance, now it demands sacrifice. Most men marry because they were told to, not because they truly wanted to. For centuries, men accomplished greatness outside the home. They built civilization, they fought wars, they created art, philosophy, technology, and innovation. Not because they avoided relationships, but because their fulfillment came from purpose. Today, men are told purpose is selfish, that focusing on their mission is neglect, that wanting space is emotional avoidance, that choosing freedom is immaturity. The modern man sees the lie. A man's identity does not depend on marriage. His value does not depend on fatherhood. His worth does not depend on being chosen. He becomes whole when he becomes self-directed. The financial paradox. Money reveals truth faster than emotion. A single man controls every dollar he earns. He invests without negotiation. He spends without judgment. He saves without guilt. There is no financial drain from someone else's habits, no pressure to maintain appearances, no silent expectation to provide more. Simplicity becomes power. Marriage changes finances instantly. Expenses multiply. Lifestyle expectations rise. Arguments become financial battles. Children amplify the cost exponentially. Many men wake up years later realizing they traded their dreams for bills. A single man avoids this trap. He builds wealth silently. He invests intentionally. He lives below his means. He progresses without financial sabotage. Money without emotional chaos becomes freedom, and a free man is a dangerous man. The physical transformation. When a man lives alone, he finally has time to notice his body again, to take ownership of his health, to rebuild discipline, to sleep deeply, to train consistently, to eat cleanly, to think clearly. There is no emotional instability draining his energy, no late-night fights wrecking his sleep, no stress triggering overeating or exhaustion, no resentment poisoning his nervous system. Men in unhappy relationships experience stress levels equal to chronic illness, heart problems, blood pressure spikes, depression, fatigue, mental collapse. Solitude heals the body. Freedom rebuilds the nervous system. Quiet restores strength. The single man becomes fitter, sharper, calmer, and more grounded. Not because he avoids love, but because he avoids instability. The mental awakening. Without emotional turbulence, a man's mind finally rests. No more constant guessing, no more self-doubt, no more emotional volatility, no more hidden expectations, no more silent resentment. Your nervous system returns to peace, your thoughts sharpen, your creativity returns, your logic resurfaces, your focus becomes razor sharp. You stop walking on eggshells, you stop suppressing your truth, you stop sacrificing your sanity to protect someone else's chaos. That is not detachment, that is maturity. You learn to respond instead of react, to think instead of panic, to observe instead of absorb. You learn emotional sovereignty, the ability to stay centered no matter who stays or leaves. Emotional independence is elite. Most men have never been emotionally independent because they were never taught how. When you're alone long enough, you learn to self-soothe without needing someone, to validate yourself without outside approval, to build confidence internally, to stand your ground without guilt, to walk away without fear, to choose peace over attachment, to love without losing yourself, to desire without dependency. You stop performing for acceptance, you stop negotiating your worth, you stop apologizing for having boundaries, you stop giving away access that should be earned. This is emotional adulthood. When you are no longer addicted to validation, you become impossible to manipulate. The social evolution. As you grow alone, your social life transforms. You stop seeking connection out of loneliness. You stop tolerating people who drain you. You stop surrounding yourself with chaos. You begin to attract people who match your stability. Your friendships become deeper. Your conversations become sharper. Your interactions become intentional. You build a tribe, not a cage. Men in unhappy relationships often become isolated. Their world shrinks, their energy collapses, their identity dissolves, but the single man expands. He builds networks based on mutual respect, ambition, and discipline. He chooses connection instead of clinging to it. He forms friendships that support growth, not dependency. Human connection becomes a choice, not an obligation. The freedom to explore. When a man is no longer bound by emotional obligation, life opens up in extraordinary ways. He can travel at will, move cities, take risks, build businesses, start new hobbies, pursue adventure, study deeply, explore passionately. Most people confuse routine with stability, but routine is often just comfortable imprisonment. A man who lives freely discovers that growth feels better than stagnation. Curiosity feels better than conformity. Adventure feels better than approval. Freedom is not chaos, it is clarity. The freedom to design life around purpose, not pressure. Vision, not obligation. Ambition, not guilt. You wake up without resentment. You sleep without fear. You move without negotiation. You realize the world is bigger than you were taught to believe. The final truth about happiness. Happiness is not found in marriage, social validation, or someone choosing you. Happiness is found in clarity, in knowing your life is your own. Society has spent generations telling men who to be a provider, be a protector, be a partner, be responsible for everyone but yourself. But when you peel back those expectations, you're left with something far more powerful: the truth that you are complete without anyone. Being single isn't failure, it's freedom from illusion, freedom from dependency, freedom from emotional turbulence, freedom from society's script. You learn that peace comes from alignment, not approval. You stop apologizing for wanting solitude. You stop explaining your choices. You stop rushing into relationships that drain you. You stop fearing judgment. You stop seeking permission to live your life. The man who walks his own path walks with the deepest confidence. He does not fear being alone because he has learned to enjoy his own company. He is not desperate for attention because he is grounded. He is not controlled by emotion because he is disciplined. He is not owned by anyone because he owns himself. That is true strength, true masculinity, true freedom. So if you find yourself alone today, understand this: you are not behind. You are not lacking. You are not incomplete. You are becoming. You are reclaiming your time, your energy, your identity, your peace, your purpose. You are learning that happiness was never about being chosen. It was about choosing yourself. Stay sharp. Stay grounded. Stay sovereign. And if you can stay single until peace becomes non-negotiable. Because the man who doesn't fear solitude is the man who cannot be controlled. He is the man who wins.